What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here, and have another amazing digital agency podcast guest for you. We're going to talk about lead generation for your digital agency. It's going to be a fun show, so let's go ahead and get into it. Hey, Cara, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Cara Brown. I'm the CEO and founder of Lead Coverage, and we do B2B lead gen for supply chain, heavy industrial, and tech.
Awesome. And so, how'd you get started in creating an agency?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So I was the 12th employee at a company called Echo Global Logistics. Very sexy, all the trucks in my
Sounds like it.
early. Yeah, very sexy. Actually, super sexy. The guys that started Echo Global Logistics also started Groupon. So I got to send the first Groupon email. It's a true story. It came from my inbox. Got to watch them grow like crazy, and then ended up being on the team that took the company I was working for public. So I did an IPO at about 25. Was asked to move to Nashville to do another IPO for a private equity company, for another supply chain management company, sort of a stream of of supply chain corporate jobs, and then ended up back in Chicago. Popped out two kids, moved to Atlanta, moved here for a sort of a garbage brokerage job. So sort of similar to supply chain, but in a different space. Instead of going public, that company raised $95 million in equity. When I exited that, the question was like, what do you do next? And someone told me the statistic that less than 2% of female founders will ever break $1 million in revenue. And I said, well, that doesn't sound that hard. So I did it with an all-female team. It took us about 10 months. And now we're on the path to 10 million. That was really
Awesome.
it. Yeah.
Well, so is Groupon still around? I haven't heard anything from them.
Yes, they're still around. They're a publicly traded company. Please buy some Groupon things. They still
So
have
you
some
must still
stock.
have some stock. Okay, I
Yeah, I
got
mean,
it.
they're still exist. They're still out of 600 West Chicago and sort of a Chicago tech darling from the early 2000s.
Very cool. Funny story. My wife got me a Groupon in a helicopter like 10 years
Yeah.
ago for my birthday, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm scared to death of helicopters. I think
I
she
hope
was
you
trying
got
to
your
kill
money
me back
back.
then. That's right. Let's talk about lead generation.
Yeah.
I find a lot of digital agencies, they take on the wrong clients, and they take on the wrong clients because they haven't been building their pipeline. They haven't been building their pipeline because they don't have a really good lead generation source in order to really kind of tap on, because they're based on word of mouth. So what have you seen working for lead generation?
Sure. So we have 9 lead gen strategies, but I'll start sort of at the top. So at the top is share good news, track who's interested, follow up. Most companies that we interact with, either customers or people that we just help out as friends, are doing one or two of those, and almost none of the companies we talk to are tracking any of it, right? Like really truly measuring what's happening inside their funnel. And so one of the things that we found successful for lead coverage is getting as niche as possible. So our niche is supply chain management companies over 100 million in revenue or venture backed. And basically, if you don't hit one or two of those criteria, we may take you on as a client, but we may not. We may say no, thank you. And that's been very successful for us. So, in terms of lead gen, when your niche is small, you can be hyper targeted in your approach. If you're wide and not very deep, it's really easy to end up talking to a lot of folks that aren't super valuable. The other thing that we like to measure, which we can definitely talk about later, we do a lot of measurement in our company, is we measure volume, velocity, and value. And I think most important for agencies is value, right? So a very smart man, part of the Groupon kickoff team in the very beginning of the early days, said to me, "Hey, Cara, it costs you just as much money to run a $250,000 account as it does a $2,500 account. So get upstream and get as big as you can, get your retainers as big as you can, as fast as you can, because that's where the real money making happens."
You mean you don't want to race to the bottom?
Shocking.
I see I see a lot of people when they initially talk with us, we really kind of determine that pricing is one of their big issues. And they're like, "Well, my competitor is actually cheaper. We're actually more." I'm like, "What does that matter? Like, do you want to win that race?" I was like, "I don't."
Yeah, we just decided to raise our minimums. I went to a trade show last week for our very specific niche industry, right? So every single person at that show could be a customer for us, which I think is super important. We went to the show, and the number that I told everyone, nobody said it was too expensive. And I came back to the office after 2 days in the trade show floor, and I said, we need to increase our minimum because no one told me it was too much. And when no one's telling you you're too expensive, you're not charging enough.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. Yep. Totally agree. What are some other? I like, or get in a little bit more about kind of the velocity and the volume and the value. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we love measurement. So we are not a creative agency. We don't have a creative director. We don't do creative. We don't do color theory. Like we're probably very different than most of the folks that listen to your podcast. But I still listen to the two Bobs and I'm all about agency work and I'm like all about sort of consulting and how do I make this business as profitable and
Mhm.
valuable as possible. So when I think about how valuable my consultancy or my agency is, I think about volume, value, and velocity. So how fast are my customers finding me, and then how fast can I get them to close a deal? Uh, velocity story is a funny one. I have a client that we have been, or a potential client we've been talking to for over 2 years. And I think I may tell him it is time to stop talking to each other. Like it's nice, like but I've sort of sent him enough info. I've done enough. We've had enough phone calls. I've talked to enough of his people. It's been 2 years. If you're not going to buy, you're not going to buy, right? So that's velocity. We also had a few weeks ago our first one call close. So we were introduced to someone. They came through a LinkedIn post that I wrote, which I should definitely mention how we do LinkedIn because it's really interesting. And one call, the guy was like, great, let's do it. And our minimums, Jason, are $15,000 a month. And the guy was like, I don't want your minimum. I want to be a big fish in your pond. We are like, all right, let's do it. So those are really exciting. So velocity is how fast are they getting in your funnel? Volume is how many deals can you handle at any one time and how many deals are going to fill your actual pipeline. This is all about close ratios, right? So you can have a whole bunch of conversations, but if you're only closing 5 to 10% of them, you're spending a lot of time on deals that aren't going to close. So I have a thing that I do. It may or may not be nice, but it helps me save a lot of time. I will look at who I'm talking to before I get on the phone. And if they're not in our box, I will open the call with something to this effect. It's so nice to meet you, Jason. I want to talk a little bit about what we do and who we do it for. I'm going to tell you how much we cost. If we're not in your budget, we'll use the next 25 minutes and I'll give you 25 minutes of free advice. My minimum is $20,000 a month, and my core market is supply chain technology, and heavy industrial. Does that feel like something that you can afford? And if they're like, no, my budget's like $2,000 a month or something crazy,
Yep.
then I'll say, hey, no problem. Let's use the next 25 minutes and I'll give you all the free advice I can. That's really helpful. They also don't call me again. So I don't have to like go down the rigmarole of like giving them a proposal for 20K a month. And they're like, we're not on the same page. Right. So
Yeah.
that stops that. And then value, right? What is this potential customer going to be worth to me? Like really, truly going to be worth to me. And I don't do the work you do. So I don't work with agency owners, but I would imagine that there are a lot of folks out there who overvalue potential customers, right? I think this project is going to come in at 80 grand and it comes in at 20. I think that this customer is going to stick around for 2 years and they stay for 3 months, right? So being really truly honest with yourself on value is really important. And the best way to check out value is just to have someone, probably not you, if you're the CEO, go back and look at your previous customers, right? Like take a deep dive and really be honest with yourself on how much is each customer actually truly worth to you.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that you get right to the budget in the very beginning. There's so many people, when I'm speaking to a crowd, one of the two questions I'll ask is, all right, how many people get the budget every single time or almost every time? And then, how many people ask for it? And it's about 50% of the room that ask, and then 50% of that. So only a quarter of the percent of agencies are actually getting the budget. And that's before they put all that work in it. I would always go to them and say, I just need a range of what you're trying to stick around, because here's the deal, especially on pricing. And I learned this the hard way when I talked to a small company I never heard of called Berkshire Hathaway. And I pitched them like a $20,000 website. They were expecting 30,000.
Yep.
So like if I started out, like I would always try to lead with what's their expectation and then match them there. But I would also even have a floor. So pricing is very important. What are
So I actually disagree. If I
Go for
can
it.
agree, I lead with our pricing. Because if they're willing to pay you $30,000 for a website, there's probably $120,000 somewhere in their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think as a woman, this isn't necessarily agency owner, but as a woman, knowing other women in business, we tend to undervalue ourselves. And what I've found is as my retainers have gone from 5 to 7 to 12 to 15 to $20,000 minimums, no one's saying no. Right? Like very few people say to me, I can't afford you.
Yeah.
Right? Unless they're like just out of the box. But if they're in the box and they understand the value, and I've done a good job of delivering what we do and showing them what we do and how we do it and what the value is we bring, as long as I lead with my minimum, actually, it's not even the minimum. I learned something at an EO event, the entrepreneur organization, that the human brain anchors on the first number that you tell someone. So when someone says to me, Cara, how do we work with you? I say, well, our average retainer comes in between $30,000 and $40,000 a month, but our minimum is 20. So instead of them saying, oh, I can get this person for $5,000 a month because I say something like, oh, our minimum is $5,000, they're already like, oh, well, she's really expensive. Like, can I afford her? Like maybe I should find another $30,000 a month somewhere to pay this person. So I think it's really important that you set your own standards, and there's always money in corporations. I have worked for enormous corporations in my corporate career. There's always money, always.
Yeah. Yeah. I call it the reverse engineer effect when you're going over the range, because so many people, when they go, I just need to know a range, 1,000, 5,000. I would literally start at 1 billion and then 1 million and then 100,000 and 20,000. So they echo that first number going, holy cow, no one else said that. What makes you
Right.
so unique? And you can really separate yourself. In switching focus a little bit, you hinted a little bit to the LinkedIn post. Tell us how you do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can attribute $480,000 to 2 LinkedIn posts. And that's just in 2020, not in 2021. So super proud of this whole process. I post super regularly on LinkedIn. Sometimes I post about being a woman in business. Sometimes it's about marketing. Sometimes it's just like, I don't know, thoughts of the week that I've decided I want to share. I have a ghostwriter. She's on my team. We speak for about an hour a week. Now, because we've been working together for a while, she can get almost 4 LinkedIn posts out of that 1 hour. I also write for Forbes and Entrepreneur and other magazines, so she does those for me at the same time. And she writes the plot, the posts themselves. They're my words, but she physically crafts them. They go to my team. My team adds the emojis and makes sure that the right people are tagged. And then they go into a file for me to approve. I approve, and then they get scheduled. So we have posts that are going out. We're recording this in September. We've got posts going out through the end of November, and I'll be gone the entire month of October. So I'll still be posting, even though I'll be in Europe, which is really nice. And so we can see attribution of almost $500,000 to LinkedIn. And this is LinkedIn Thought Leadership. And it cost me, call it $2,000 a month to do this. So it's my most ROI driven piece of lead gen that we do for myself. And it's been a terrific way for us to meet people. You can't always track every single lead back to LinkedIn. But it was a funny story. I was at this trade show I just mentioned in our niche industry, and I ran into some guy that I had known from a million years ago. And he said, Cara, I read every LinkedIn post. And I was like, awesome. And he
Stalker.
said, man, yeah, stalker, right? Well, that's the whole point. Like, please stalk me. And he said, "May I please introduce you to my CMO? I think that I'd really like to make sure that you two meet each other." And now they're going to be a client. So you never know who's reading it. They may not be liking, sharing, and engaging, but putting yourself out there is super important.
Yeah, I love it. And these are just regular posts. Do you have a call to action on there, or is it just helpful?
Yeah. So we're trying to, the LinkedIn algorithm changes pretty regularly. We do this for clients as well. So we have a human being on our team who is regularly trying to sort of like bust a LinkedIn algorithm, not in an ugly way, just in a how do we use it to our advantage. But one of the stats she told me that I was really surprised is that less than 2% of people that are on LinkedIn are actively posting. So just by actively engaging in LinkedIn, you're already in the top 2% of folks that are sort of voyeurs only, right? And so as long as you just put anything out there, you're going to be sort of doing better than other folks. If you get into like exactly what the, doing polls, calls to action, links back to landing pages, links to form fills and video, it's a whole nother podcast we can do just to talk about how to like optimize LinkedIn. In my professional opinion, now this is specifically for my market, which is supply chain, heavy industrial, and tech. I don't need to put video out there. I don't need to be super complicated about it because no one's buying from LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn just keeps me front and center for the folks in my world and in my universe, that when I see them at the trade show or when I send them an email or when they see something from me that's interesting and they have a need, they're like, oh man, there's this woman who posts all the time on LinkedIn. She's really interesting. I'm going to reach out. Right. So it's just about staying in the conversation.
Yeah, it's about consistency. You
Yeah.
mentioned, you were chatting with someone for 2 years. Holy cow! Like if I was chatting with them, but when I look at our stats, most people don't buy from us for about a year and a half to 2 years, and they're digesting that content, which is no sweat off my back. And if they never buy and they just get helpful content, I'm perfectly fine with that as well. But but yeah, just to go through the proposal process for 2 years, that is yeah, shit or get off the pot, dude.
Yeah. And yeah, like this particular human is such a nice guy and he's so kind. And I know he does want to work with us. And he is very specifically strapped by, investors and sort of what these investors want to do. I get it. Like, and it doesn't bother me to like have a relationship with this person. He's also well connected. He's a good human. But we are going to have to at some point be like, hey, I can't do one more deliverable for you, right? Like I can't put together another email or send you another proposal. Like they're all the same. Like it hasn't changed,
Yeah,
right? Like the same proposal you got 2 years ago is going to be the same one I'm going to send you now because what we do hasn't really changed.
awesome. Well, this has all been great, Cara. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the audience listening in?
I think one of the things that's really important to us, Jason, is the combination of sales and marketing. That sales and marketing, including PR and AR, analyst relations, which I know a lot of folks in digital marketing don't really touch analysts at all because it's kind of boring, but really important to your senior leaders, right? So if you're going up market, and this is not small business, this is enterprise. So we're very fortunate in our niche, we have sort of along the spectrum, small business all the way up through sort of big corporate enterprise, even publicly traded companies. And so we get to touch everything from analyst relations to public relations all the way through. Sorry.
Okay.
Apparently you have to
You're in the
move
witness protection program for everyone listening to just the audio. Her screen just went black, and I was like, "Oh, someone got her."
Sorry. Apparently you have to move in the WeWork cubbies or the lights go off on you. Sorry about that. But long story short, the deeper we get in the niche, the higher our prices can go. And the more we get integrated with both PR, AR, and sales. And the stickier you get, the more you can deliver math back to your client that goes to their boss, that goes to the board. The longer you'll stay in the organization, the more valuable you are, and the more just the stickier that you get inside those orgs. And so that's my sort of best piece of advice is if you can deliver math back to your clients, specifically math that goes to the board or to some sort of senior executive, you will be very, very sticky. So find something that's meaningful to your customer that you can deliver on a regular basis that means something to their boss.
Awesome, love it. What's the agency website people can go and check you guys out?
Yeah, we're leadcoverage.com. And we'd love to hear from anyone who wants to talk more about lead gen or anything about supply chain.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Cara, for coming on the show. Make sure you guys go check out the website, connect with Cara. And if you guys want to be around the most amazing agency owners in the world, where they're sharing what's working currently and be able to see the things you might not be able to see, as well as have fun scaling your business, I'd like to invite all of you go to check out digitalagencyelite.com. This is our exclusive mastermind just for digital agency owners. So go to digitalagencyelite.com. And until next time, have a swank day.